Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our board meeting of the 27th of February, 2024. I would like to call this meeting to order, seeing that we do have quorum present, and acknowledge that we meet today on the unceded and unsurrendered ancestral homelands of the Algonquin Nation. We appreciate their enduring stewardship of these lands on which we live, work, and learn. And we thank them for the insights and wisdom so generously shared with us together, moving forward on our journey, seeking truth and reconciliation. Are there any declarations of interest from trustees? Seeing none, I would like to move then to the report from Committee of the Whole in camera. Vice Chair Milburn.
The Committee of the Whole in camera met in camera this evening and reports and recommends as follows. And moved by Trustee Kaplan-Murth, which I will second, that as per section 30 brackets 1 of Regulation 181, the board accepts the recommendation of the Special Education Appeal Board held on February 12th, 2024, and so indicates to each of the persons indicated in Regulation 181, section 29 brackets 1. Moved by Trustee Scott, which I will second, that staff proceed as directed in Committee of the Whole in camera with respect to a legal matter. Moved by Trustee Blackburn, which I will second, that the tentative settlement between the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board and Professional Student Services Personnel Unit, which will form a collective agreement dated September 1st, 2022 to August 31st, 2026 be ratified. Moved by Trustee Bell, which I will second, that the tentative settlement between the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board and professional educators and child care staff, which will form a collective agreement dated September 1st, 2022 to August 31st, 2026 be ratified. And moved by Trustee Lara, which I will second, that the tentative settlement between the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board and educational support professional, which will form a collective agreement dated September 1st, 2022 to August 31st, 2026 be ratified.
Thank you, Trustee Milburn. For the second of those recommendations, since I was the mover in camera, we will need a substitute mover. Trustee Blackburn, thank you. And the next question I have is, we did have extensive debate and discussion of a number of these items in camera. Are there any of these items which are non-consent or need a separate vote? And I'm not seeing any, so I will call the question on all of these together as a group. This will be a recorded vote, and I will ask Manager Guthrie to please open the vote in eScribe.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. This is going to take me a minute to set up the vote as a collective.
Are you having a problem, Trustee Blackburn? So are you voting in favor? Yeah. And we do, so we can
proceed.
We can proceed with Trustee Blackburn is voting in favor. And that will be corrected. So the motion is carried with 11 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Is there anything further, Vice Chair Milburn?
Not at this time.
Thank you very much for that. And I would like now to move to the presentation, which we have welcoming Ryan Doucette, who's the chair. Oh, sorry, we have to approve the agenda first. And that means we need a mover, Trustee Naira, thank you. Seconded by Trustee Lee. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the agenda. All those in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. And that means we are now at the point where I can welcome Ryan Doucette, who chairs the Advisory Committee on Equity, and Jacqueline Lawrence, our Diversity and Equity Coordinator, for a presentation on the work of the Advisory Committee on Equity, better known as ACE, for us this evening. So welcome. Thank you very much for being here tonight, Ryan. We've allocated about 10 minutes for the presentation, and we will have a little bit of time for questions after that as well. So please go ahead when you're ready. And Mary Jane Farish, Superintendent, who oversees the equity team, is also here.
If Chair Scott, if with your permission, I'd like to do a brief introduction. I'd like to introduce this report tonight and begin with an acknowledgement and honor paid to the leadership of Ryan Doucette and Jacqueline Lawrence, who have collaborated so expertly as leaders in service of the Advisory Committee on Equity over the past 2 years. I want to express my appreciation for their thoughtful and intentional leadership decisions that have significantly influenced and shaped the ACE meeting structure and design, as well as the culture of productive engagement, always keeping students at the center. Ryan and Jacqueline have spent many overtime sessions with me in meetings to plan our work and our agendas. I continue to learn from them as they build and nurture the infrastructure of ACE to support ACE in the achievement of their directives in their advisory role to the Board of Trustees. I expect that Ryan and Jacqueline will thank Melissa Applethwaite for her sincere commitment to this committee. And in addition to Melissa, we have been so very well supported by many members of the board services team. I would like to add my appreciation. I want to recognize the current and past members of ACE, many of whom have been connected to guiding this work throughout decades and throughout multiple iterations of the committee. ACE, as is the case with all board advisory committees, is powered by the labor of volunteers who invest their hearts and heads in this work. Volunteers are truly the life force of this advisory body. Ryan and Jacqueline will present this report on behalf of the Advisory Committee on Equity through a narrative they have crafted to highlight key accomplishments over the past couple of years with them as leaders. You will hear the fullness of the work achieved and the fullness of the work still to come. And now I would like to warmly welcome Ryan Doucette and Jacqueline Lawrence to lead us through this report.
Thank you so much, Trustee Scott, and thank you so much, Superintendent Farish. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan, and thank you for the opportunity to share ACE's report and some of the things that are underway this year. I want to start by acknowledging the continued commitment and dedication of our members demonstrated over the years. I also want to emphasize that this group asked directly to continue to meet when COVID was declared a pandemic. They felt that it was important to have a vital link to parents and communities. As a result, these conversations with family representatives, community partners, and staff have been deep, powerful, hard, necessary, and enriching. I invite you to refer to the ACE membership list at the back of the report to see these amazing folks that have been holding space for the last 2 years. I would also be remiss if I did not extend a special thank you to the previous chairs, Deepika Grover and Ayan Karsh, for their incredible contribution in expanding member and community engagement. They were instrumental in utilizing an anti-oppression, anti-racism, and trauma-informed lens to demonstrate the significance and power of a decolonized meeting space, which centers voices and lived experiences from the margins. Following their departure, Jacqueline and I were recognized as the 2022 to 2024 chairs following their tenure. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Jacqueline.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Ryan. Earlier today, I was at a meeting where I shared with my team members that one of my favorite quotes is, "Transformation occurs in the conversation." This includes the self-reflection, the self-excavation that leads our conversation with ourselves. But it also includes the conversations that take place in ACE, a community space, a collective space that is made up of diverse voices, diverse peoples who are willing to engage in hard, necessary conversations that invite us to inquire about and to share the stories behind critical numbers that reveal that Indigenous, Black, and other racialized 2S GLBTQ students with disabilities and multilingual learners are often among the groups of students who are high on the rates of suspensions, run the risk of not graduating because they haven't hit that threshold of 16 credits by grade 10, or do not feel a sense of belonging in our schools. And so for many members of ACE, this equity journey, this conversation is moving us through our own comfort zones, our own fear zones, our own learning zones, and our own transformational zones, so that we can expand or shift narratives about what we know, what we don't know, and what we don't know that we don't know. And so we've had these hard conversations, these necessary conversations, so that ACE can continue to achieve its objective to advise the board in fulfilling its commitment to provide an equitable and inclusive educational and working environment to support the well-being and success of students, staff, and families. We know that the success and the shortfalls of a student does not only impact the student, it impacts their families, the communities, society, all of us. This is why during our monthly meetings, members of ACE are willing to lean into unfamiliar spaces with each other so that we can be present to both the opportunities and the challenges to identify and to address systemic barriers, build a shared vision, expand bridges of understanding, and provide clarity in areas of deep complexity with agility. The complexities have been intense and intricate over the last few years, given the lingering unpredictability of COVID, its disproportionate impact on equity-seeking deserving groups, and the safety concerns that members expressed given the increased scrutiny around those who are from equity-seeking groups and those who are committed to doing this work. This touched members deeply, in particular when our conversations around streaming ACE's public meetings. And while there is incredible understanding of the need for this space to be publicized, there were some deep concerns in terms of how do we ensure that what is said in the space is certainly protecting our members. So I'll turn it back to Ryan.
Thank you, Jacqueline. ACE reflects a continued commitment to anti-oppression and equity-informed lenses towards district priorities that work to ensure equitable access, opportunities, and outcomes for students, staff, and families served by the OCDSB. As Jacqueline mentioned, social media and fear-based techniques are impacting school climate and, in particular, equity-related work. ACE worked to balance these safety considerations while also, as mentioned, respecting the importance of public access and transparency. Of the many accomplishments, a few that I'd like to highlight were feedback on the following areas: the budget, the mental health strategy, the toolkit on bias, discrimination, and hate, including protocols to address hate, equitable hiring, and the student achievement report. Furthermore, we were able to apply more rigor to ACE's structures to increase efficiency and effectiveness, including restructuring subcommittees to be in alignment with the Indigenous Human Rights and Equity Roadmap, and streamlining committees into 4 key working groups, which include membership and community engagement, data collection, equitable hiring, and the steering committee, which comprises chairs and reps from different tables. We've also been successful in utilizing tools like shared docs to enhance our accessibility and work outside of regularly occurring meeting schedules. As Superintendent Farish mentioned, I also want to express a deep thanks to board staff and trustees for all their continued efforts towards supporting ACE. Jacqueline, back to you.
Thanks, Ryan. As Ryan mentioned, we continue to apply more rigor in our structures, and this includes providing staff members who are presenting at ACE 1 or 2 questions that support them in applying an equity lens so that when they do enter the space and come to the table, they have begun the process of looking at their work through an equity lens. For example, we are really looking forward to our next meeting to engage with the finance department's presenters in conversation around resource allocation through an equity lens. This strengthens the culturally relevant and responsive capacity to communicate with major stakeholders in ways that strengthen understanding of the district's decision-making process, while also ensuring that we are listening for how to be in communication with those who have experienced being underserved, particularly and feeling further marginalized during this critical time. In addition, this year, ACE's work plan includes revision of our policy, in particular to capture some of the practices that have emerged to engage the communities we serve and those that are now being seen to strengthen community relationships. Secondly, to engage in our membership and community campaign. This will then determine our membership for the 2024-2026 term. And this will also encourage us to continue to work with community partners to share the information that they are getting or accessing through their participation at ACE so that this information continues to grow within the communities that often do not hear very much about what's going on in OCDSB. Another priority, of course, is revising, Another part of our commitment is to really ensure that we are activating our steering committees and to really listen deeper for how to listen to the space, how to listen to our stakeholders. I will close by saying that one of the key areas that ACE listens for is what can be done to share how the learning within the ACE conversation impacts other areas. A couple of years ago, for example, when ACE provided a motion to the trustees with respect to including Indigenous and Black students' presence in the mental health strategy, that was a very incredible way of how we know that the communication cycle was completed. So ACE will continue to listen for how does the work and how do the conversations generated in ACE continue to impact these particular priorities as they move through the cycle. And we will now open the floor for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And I have a question from Trustee Aziz.
Thank you, Chair, through you. I just want to express my gratitude to the both of you for your succinct presentation and the clarity of the work that ACE is doing. I think it's important and valuable work, and appreciate that coming to the board. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Aziz. Are there other questions? Trustee Bell.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair. Thank you, Ryan and Jacqueline, for your presentation. Many of us around the table have had the benefit of sitting around the ACE table and watching some very courageous, or participating in some very courageous conversations. I wonder if you could speak to the priorities going forward, and in particular, if there are any pieces of advice or ways of doing business that you have seen in ACE that would be beneficial to the trustees around the table. Thanks.
Maybe I'll respond briefly to that. I guess sort of, although an equity-based committee, the idea of sort of continuous improvements, you know, small changes over time. I joined ACE as a member a long time ago, and there was sometimes a sense of a bit of a challenges between how members wanted to show up and participate and the existing board structure. I think that's something I've watched develop and grow throughout the years, not being afraid to try different approaches, things like that. So those are some of the reflections that I'd like to share on that. Thank you for the question, Trustee Bell.
Thanks for your question, Trustee Bell. One of the things I will add is really how important it is to communicate to the diverse communities in ways that they see themselves in the communication. They see themselves reflected in the work that we're doing within OCDSB. I think that's a real paramount conversation, because you know, we have our own acronyms and our own language, so to speak, but how do we translate that language to really demonstrate some of the great work that's going on within the district, as well as some of the areas that we do need to have more community engagement, and whether it's through community partners, so that we can go to the next level. So I really do think that one of the things that ACE demonstrates is how do we create room and space for diverse voices to step into those spaces and to feel safe and feel a sense of belonging, that this is their space to be a vital contribution as we move forward together.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Trustee Lyra.
Thanks. So first, big fan of y'all. I appreciate the work that you all do. My question is, do you feel ACE is adequately resourced to undertake the task that the board has asked of you in advising us? Do you have enough meetings? Do you have enough staff support? Do you have all the resources in a timely manner? And if not, what are the things you think we could be doing better to ensure that you are able to give us the best advice possible? Thanks.
I'll speak to that briefly. There could always be more time. There could always be more resources. I think in any capacity, whether it's committees or networks, that it is a challenge at times. And even if we do have the capacity as chairs, or in some cases, some members to mobilize, well, what about the impacts on membership's family or other obligations they have? It's something we've wrestled with a little bit internally as well, being able to balance the needs of members and respecting the time. But Jacqueline, do you want to add on to that?
Thanks, Ryan. I'll add that, I'll be straight up and say that the equity portfolio itself is not fully funded. We certainly need resources, and it shows in terms of the types of consultation sometimes that ACE wants to conduct in terms of being in communities, and so there are some limitations around that. But I also think in terms of I think time is what I've heard mostly from members in terms of we have a very quick turnaround in some of the work that we want to get feedback on. And so sometimes community members don't have the same amount of time to digest the incredible work that's been done so that they can be more fulsome in their feedback. I would say those are the two critical things in terms of funding overall for equity initiatives within the district, and then also just in terms of time to be able to really digest the rich work that's going on so that we can really ensure those nuances that are essential to understand the full diversity of our student population and how some of our programs and our policies and our practices do impact students, staff, families, and communities that we serve.
Sorry, a little bit of clarification. When you say time, do you mean time after the board has publicized what it is intending to do? Do you mean time at the meetings to discuss the issues? Time is rather nebulous, and I was hoping you could define it.
You're hitting all of those three elements. So time, for example, to provide feedback to the work that's being done, time for to really be able to share the implementation of work that's ongoing, time for some of our meetings, because sometimes we do go over. We've tried to scale that back a little bit, but sometimes the conversation gets so rich because folks are starting to unpack some of those complexities, starting to really listen for the nuances to come to the surface. And sometimes it takes time for that to bubble to the surface in terms of what are the impact on the various groups that are impacted by the policies, programs that we do operate within our district.
So sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd rather hear from you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I echo those concerns around time on all those different fronts. And also just briefly to state that, when there's more funding for MLOs or student success coaches or the human rights team, that is celebrated at ACE. And there's deep concerns when resource constraints lead to reduction in various staff that support equity related work. That's something I've seen over the years. So I wanted to share that today. Thank you.
I guess my last question.
And very briefly, please, Trustee Lara, I still have one more person on my list, and I did indicate that we were going to try to spend about equivalent amounts of time on the presentation and on Q&A.
With respect, I had 5 minutes and I have 4.5 minutes left on my clock. These are the rules that are in our bylaws.
If you insist, but it may mean we have some challenges with other things. And this is a presentation, it is not a debate.
My last question is, one of the changes that the school board has made this year is ensuring that our long-range agenda is posted for a greater period of time. Has this been beneficial to ACE so that you know what's coming? Has that allowed you to have further and deeper conversations? Is it a useful thing for us to continue to do?
I would say that it has been very helpful for us in terms of being able to plan our meetings. During our planning sessions, we can then really get to invite folks to step into the space. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things we're then able to do is to listen for what are the critical questions that the ACE members would like to hear from potential presenters when they do enter the space. So I would say that that scheduling has certainly helped us in our planning process and streamlined the ways that we can engage with those who are sharing that information. So that has been quite a bonus, I would say.
And I'd add that same bonus is appearing in things like the ad hoc policy committee, in which the schedule of policy revisions is posted well in advance and provides opportunity for follow-ups and advance notice on items like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all of my questions.
And our last question will be from Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Ryan and Jacqueline, for your summary. It was great, and thank you for all the work that you do. I was touched by Jacqueline, your words in terms of making sure that that we create a sense of belonging in our schools, and I was just thinking about whether there are all the most underrepresented students in our schools, whether they are participating in ACE, and if not, why not, and what we can do to create that safe space for everyone. I'm thinking partially about the Jewish students who I know have felt pretty unsafe in our schools, and I'm not sure if they have a voice really at ACE, but of course they would be invited, but also other students, and wondering if we've done any work to look out at our school population, at who are those least likely to be represented, and how can we bring them in and make sure that they feel safe and supported.
Thank you for your question. I would say that one of the questions that ACE continues to grapple with is how do we bring student voice into the space? The way that we've done it up to this point are three ways. Number one, we have invited representatives from the Black Youth Forum, the Rainbow Youth Forum, and the Indigenous Original Voices spaces to share their lived experiences and particular issues or concerns that are in the space. The second way that we've also done it is to really invite student trustees. And there are moments when we do have student trustees, student trustees as well as student senators sitting in our spaces to really be part of the conversation. The third way that we create space for students is there is a community space that we have created at the beginning of our meetings, such that it is open for anyone who is a student, a staff member, a community partner, who would like to step into that space to share their lived experiences, something that's critically important. And we've had members of the Jewish community step into that space to share their concerns around some of the experiences that some of our Jewish students were having. So we're open to keep listening, but there's definitely a commitment to keep listening for how do we really ensure that we know what is going on with students and what's impacting them in terms of their sense of well-being and sense of belonging in spaces. And, I think at the beginning it was mentioned that the critical thing that ACE is always asking is, how do we know that the particular program, the particular policies that we're providing that equity lens on, how do we know that this is actually having a positive impact or transforming the culture, the learning environment in particular, to foster that sense of belonging or that sense of safety as well for students in our schools.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And on behalf of all of us, thank you very much, Ryan, Jackie, and Superintendent Farish, Mary Jane, for bringing us this presentation this evening. It certainly gives us some useful information for us to be thinking about, and I hope that a number of us will be able to take in the ACE committee meeting that's happening on Thursday evening, where I'm sure there will be good discussion as always. So your time much appreciated tonight.
Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, that brings us to item 7 on our agenda, which is the chair's briefing. And I will begin by noting that today is Tuesday, and it is not just any Tuesday, it is Toonie Tuesday at the OCDSB. Schools across the district have been busy collecting money to support the vital work of the Education Foundation of Ottawa. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone who has chipped in and helped with this. Every toonie makes a real difference for OCDSB students. You can still donate through the Education Foundation website. And to find it, just visit educationfoundationottawa.ca. Secondly, on February 24th, several OCDSB students and staff were recognized at the Global Community Alliance Gala in recognition of Black History Month. The Youth Achievement Awards celebrate students who demonstrate leadership abilities, exemplify appropriate behavior and values in their school community, and participate in community activities or global outreach initiatives. This year's recipients were Jude Husari from Gloucester High School, Amy Zhang from Sir Wilfrid Laurier Secondary School, Malika Kamanzi from Colonel Bai Secondary School, who we are happy to have as one of our student trustees this year, and Sami Ghoslani from Lisgar Collegiate Institute. And in addition to our students, Fielding Drive Public School Vice Principal Nicole Phillips was recognized with the Professional Achievement Award, and OCDSB Student Success Coordinator Nabil Ahmed received the Community Builder Award. A huge congratulations to everyone, and my thanks to Trustee Donna Dixon, who gave remarks on behalf of the board. Are there any questions on the chair's briefing? Trustee Bell.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for highlighting Toonie Tuesday. Over the past week, I've been visiting a number of the schools in my zone, and for the first time, one of the first things that I've heard from our administrators is the issue of food insecurity that our schools have been experiencing. And I know that Trustee Donna Dixon has also raised this issue a number of times, but I'm hoping that either you or possibly the director could speak to what are we doing to address the rise in food insecurity, the empty bellies that are showing up in our schools, and what more can we do? Thanks.
Director?
Through you, Madam Chair, thanks, Trustee Bell. A very valid query, a few points for consideration for the Board of Trustees. First and foremost, as a member of the Board of Directors of VONFI, the Ottawa Network for Education, one of the main initiatives that organization endeavors or strives for is a food program, a breakfast program in our schools. The number of schools served this school year has surpassed 100 of our elementary sites. Over 8,500 students being served regularly with breakfast programs, and yet the need, as Trustee Bell has pointed out, is still there. Those breakfast programs and my school visits have a practicality element that they spill over into lunch programs. Very, very thoughtful coordination on the part of the breakfast program liaisons or coordinators in making sure that food goes to multiple uses throughout the day, including sandwiches made from the breakfast piece that are for lunch. A number of our schools have partnerships with local agencies or organizations or farms or grocery stores for fresh fruit. It is an increasing demand in our schools. It's a valid point. And the other piece I would add from a school perspective, a number of our schools are also beginning to engage in various initiatives along with community partners like Brookfield High School that's engaging with community partners to create a bit of a food cupboard for their students to address a food insecurity issues that arise rightly. And last but not least, just as a very brief introduction to a complex issue for our organization, a number of agencies have called for the federal government to have a national school food program. It was an article that was recently published in the Ontario Public School Boards Association's regular media outputs to look at this issue more broadly, because it's one that's not only a city issue and a province issue, it's a national issue for our students.
And I will just supplement it with the fact that the Education Foundation itself also does support food security needs for students and their families. They do not run regular meal programs. That's more the role of ONFI, but they do, on an emergency basis, respond to requests through principals or social workers where there is an immediate need for assistance with food for the student and the family.
Thank you both for your comprehensive responses. I would ask Chair that this be something that's brought back to the board for further discussion and further updates, because from the reports that I've read and from what I've heard, things are not yet getting better. So thank you very much.
Thank you for raising it. Trustee Dixon?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Justine, for bringing that forward. I guess the second piece that I'd like to suggest, and maybe we can have a more broader discussion, is can we not find a space in all our schools that we can set up to have something inside, and besides having the principal's office be the place to go and get that nutrition? I think that would be really a world of good and a good discussion to have within the board to be able to set that up in every school as space.
Thank you, Trustee Dixon. Any comment, Mr. Director?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I think Trustee Dixon, a very valid point raised. In my weekly school visits, I noticed a number of different structures to handle that. In some cases, the food's distributed right into the classrooms very unceremoniously. There's a food basket of fruit where students can go and pick it up on their own. In other schools, there's a more coordinated effort through the main office or through a lead on staff. So I think it's a very valid point. When we bring an update to the Board of Trustees in the spring, we'll give some thought and reach out to our schools on how that's handled, just to give you a sense. But I've seen multiple versions of what you're talking about, Trustee, and I think it's a valid point. I think schools are finding a way internally to handle it gracefully and handle it effectively and efficiently within their own context. But it's a valid point raised, because there are variations to that within the visits that I've done on my own, and I'm by no means an expert, but ONFI as well, sitting on the board, I'll ask them for a perspective on where they see strategies that are really effective to share more broadly with our schools. A valid point.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 8, briefing from the director.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. This past Saturday, I had the pleasure of attending a special Black History Month event hosted by the OCDSB's Black Youth Forum. Students, in collaboration with the Future Path Network, Somali Center for Family Services, and the V2V Project. This well-attended event held at Longfield's Davidson Heights Secondary School was emceed by OCDSB students and featured an array of talented singers, poets, musicians, as well as a fashion show. A panel discussion led by Kishana King, Stefan Alexis, Kingsley Swim, and Awad Ibrahim provided inspirational and informative insights. It was a wonderful opportunity for families to participate, connect, watch, and showcase their talents and learn about the services the OCDSB and community partners have to offer. My thanks to all involved in this wonderful initiative. It was great to take part. Over the past year, we've been working to develop a new platform to improve consultation with our communities. In February, we launched our new Engage OCDSB online tool. This tool will be used to gather feedback on policy and program reviews, new schools and capital projects, the budgetary process, as well as other initiatives. Visit Engage OCDSB's page to see what consultations are currently open for input. You can register on the platform, which allows you to follow specific consultations and receive updates on the projects that matter to you. Users can also participate anonymously without registering. This platform is open to all members of our community and is available in multiple languages. We are currently looking for input on policies including pregnancy and parental leave for trustees, and the student transfer appeal process. We are also hoping to hear from students on our commencement ceremonies policy. The tool will also be used to engage our community through the 2024-2025 budget process. We will continue to keep our community informed about new consultations through our weekly updates and the Engage OCDSB platform. In addition, a reminder, tomorrow is Pink Shirt Day. I encourage all students and staff to wear your favorite pink apparel. It's a day that started when a group of students decided to all wear pink in response to another child who was being bullied for wearing a pink shirt. As a community, we can lift each other up by wearing pink on February 28th. It's a small but meaningful gesture that shows everyone that we stand together for kindness at the OCDSB. With the month of March nearly upon us, we are busy preparing for the launch of the 2024 Valuing Voices Identity Matters Student Survey. This voluntary and confidential survey will focus on questions of identity and school climate. Parents, guardians, and caregivers of students from kindergarten through to grade 6 can complete the survey for their child. Students in grades 7 to 12 can complete the survey on their own. The information gathered will help us address issues such as bullying, school safety, mental health, learning, and student achievement. The survey runs from April 11th to the 26th. Detailed information will be shared after the March break. And last but not least, a reminder that Wednesday evening at 6 p.m., we will be holding a virtual speaker series session for parents, guardians, and caregivers on combating human trafficking. The session aims to equip parents and guardians with the know-how to identify the warning signals and grooming behaviors and understand the factors making children vulnerable and susceptible to trafficking. More information can be found on our website. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Director. Are there any questions for the Director? And I'm seeing none, which brings us to item 9, delegations. And this evening we have no delegations. So straight on to item 10, confirmation of the board minutes from the 30th of January, 2024. Do we have a mover to confirm those minutes? Trustee Nash, seconded by Trustee Dixon. Are there any errors or omissions in these minutes? And seeing none, I will call the question on confirmation. All those in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. And we come then to item 11. Is there any business arising from these minutes? And I'm seeing none. So we are at matters for action. And we will begin with receipt of the 2 Committee of the Whole budget reports, one from the 30th of January, 2024, one from the 20th of February, 2024. Trustee Lyra?
I'm happy to move receipt of the 30th of January and February 20th, 2024 Cal budget reports.
And do we have a seconder for that? Trustee Milburn, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions in these reports? And I'm seeing none, so I will call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. Trustee Lyra? Did you say there were no recommendations?
There are no recommendations in this report.
Thank you very much. Moving on then. Next item is receipt of the Committee of the Whole report from the 6th of February. Vice Chair Milburn.
I will now move receipt of the February 6, 2024 Committee of the Whole report.
And a seconder for that? Trustee Jenkins, thank you. Any errors or omissions in this report? And seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Trustee Milburn.
There are recommendations coming out of the report, so I will read the first one. On a motion by Trustee Lara, which I will second, that the Facilities Renewal Program and School Condition Improvement Project budget in the amount of $117,821,303 be approved as detailed in Appendix B of Report 24-006. That staff be authorized to proceed with individual project tenders within the Facilities Renewal Program and School Condition Improvement Project plans. That as FRP/SC projects, SCI projects are tendered based on bid results or as priorities change, additional projects may be added or removed to suit the availability of the overall budget, and these additional projects will be able to proceed without further approval as long as the total overall FRP/SCI budgets are not exceeded, and that the chair of the board and the director of education are authorized to award contracts above $500,000 to that are within this overall available, uncommitted, approved budget.
And my question, is this a consent item? I'm seeing no objection to leaving it as consent. Other recommendations?
Yes, on a motion by Trustee Blackburn, which I will second, that the recommended school year calendar as outlined in Report 24-023 be submitted to the Ministry of Education for approval as the official 2024 to 2025 school year calendar for the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board's elementary and secondary schools.
And again, is this a consent item? And I'm seeing no one wishing it to be non-consent. Anything further in your report?
Not at this time, thank you.
So we will deal with the two consent items when we have finished looking at the other matters for action. And next up, we have the report from the Ad Hoc Policy Review Committee from the 8th of February. And back to you, Trustee Milburn.
I will now move receipt of the February 8th, 2024 Ad Hoc Policy Committee report.
And a seconder for receipt. Trustee Dixon. Are there any errors or omissions in this report? And I'm seeing none. I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? And opposed? Motion is carried. Vice Chair Milburn.
We'll move on to the first recommendation on a motion which which Chair Scott has.
We'll need a substitute. Yes. Trustee Blackburn, thank you.
So on a motion by Trustee Blackburn, which I will second, that the proposed revisions to policy P071 CUR Indigenous Self-Identification as attached as Appendix A to Report 24-012 be approved.
And is this a consent item? And I'm not seeing any objection.
And then moving on to the second recommendation on a motion by Trustee Kaplan-Murth, which I will second, that the proposed revisions to policy P07117 Gov, student trustees, and policy P.113 Gov, student senate attached as appendices A through C to report 24-016 be approved as amended.
And again, is this consent? And there is no objection. So I will call, so if there's nothing else from that report, we will move on to the next item for action, which is the report from the 13th of February 2024 meeting of the Advocacy Strategy Committee. Trustee Aziz, would you like to present the report?
Yes, moved by Trustee Presley, seconded by...
Could you move receipt first, please?
Sorry, yes, I'd like to move receipt of the report.
And a seconder for receipt? Trustee Dixon? Are there any errors or omissions in this report? And I'm seeing none. All those in favor of receipt? And opposed? Motion is carried. Back to you, Trustee Aziz.
The recommendation was moved by Trustee Presley, and I need a substitute mover.
And we will need a substitute for Trustee Presley because she's absent. Trustee Bell, thank you. So go ahead, sorry.
That the advocacy briefs for mental health and well-being, special education, transportation, replacement worker costs, capital funding, and protecting schools from cyber threats be approved as amended.
And my question again, is this consent? Trustee Bell, it's not consent?
It's not consent in that I wanted to raise 1 point, and the 1 point was these briefs are incredible.
If it's not consent, it's not consent.
Not consent.
So we will leave that one for the non-consent items and go back to take the vote to call the question on the other items, which were the facilities renewal funding, the school year calendar, and the policy revisions from the Ad Hoc Policy Review Committee. And we can take the vote on all of those. If Manager Guthrie can open the vote in eScribe, please. Trustee Kaplan-Murth, are you having a problem with voting?
I haven't received it on eScribe. I'm waiting.
Well, the rest of us all have. So if you'd just like to register your vote orally.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Thank you very much. And the motions are all carried. 11 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. And that is the recommendations from Committee of the Whole, and it is also the recommendations from the Ad Hoc Policy Review Committee. And that brings us to non-consent items, which is the recommendation approval of the advocacy strategy briefs. And who was the substitute for Trustee Presley? Trustee Bell, you were the substitute for Trustee Presley. So would you like to introduce the recommendation?
Why, thank you, Chair Scott. I know that my colleagues have worked very hard with board staff to come up with these advocacy briefs. And so I just want to thank all those that are involved, because these matter. These are really important. These are great tools that we will be able to go to the ministry with, to the province, to our counterparts, to let them know where we need adequate funding so that we can meet the needs of children. I think, again, I'm impressed with the layout of these tools. They present the issue, The one thing that I did want to raise to the committee here, to the board here tonight, and I'm hopeful when we go out and use these tools, we'll remember and use the stories of how they impact children, how they end up impacting our students. Because we have a number of stories, whether it's capital priorities, transportation, special education, that touch upon real lives, the children that are being negatively affected because we do not have the adequate resources we need to meet their needs. And so, Chair Scott, I look to you and I look to others around the table when you're out meeting with people, using these tools to remember the students that are behind the information and the stats and the data that are available there, because this really matters for them. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? And I'm seeing none. Do you need wrap up, Trustee Bell?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will ask if Manager Guthrie can open the vote on this recommendation.
It's not being sent to me again.
So are you in favor, Trustee Kappenworth?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the motion is carried, 11 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Thank you very much. And that brings us to matters for discussion and report from the Ontario Public School Boards Association. Trustee Jennings.
No report this evening.
Actually, I do have one thing to raise, and that is that today we received the call for boards to submit their policy resolutions to OPSPA. That those policy resolutions, that I will be circulating the information that was sent from OPSPA earlier today. They are required to reflect the board's corporate position. So anything that anyone is looking at bringing forward must be made available in time that we can deal with it at our March board meeting, because the deadline to submit resolutions to OPSPA is Wednesday, the 10th of April. So for us locally, that means the Friday before our March board meeting at the absolute latest. All of the policy resolutions are submitted are reviewed first by the Executive Council of OPSPA, and then they will go to the annual general meeting in early July. So that is where things are. I will send this out. There is some guideline for the kind of things that can be put forward and forms for some of them. So you will have all of the necessary information if you choose to use it. And that is everything that I have. And if there's nothing else, moving on then, item 14 is the board work plan, which you will see attached to your agenda. If there are any questions or comments, Trustee Lyra? No? Oh, it is not attached here. And lastly, but not least, we reach item 15, new business. Is there any new business public? Trustee Lyra.
Thank you. So I moved a notice of motion on what I believe to be in due time around supporting another district's writing of a letter I'm wondering where that motion has ended up.
I'm sorry, which one?
So, okay, so I moved it, I thought in due time for this meeting, and I'm wondering where it ended. So it ended up in March? Okay, thank you.
Yes, it's going to committee first. Any other new business, public? Seeing none, we have completed our agenda for this evening, and I now declare our meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.